Lecture 2, Critical Thinking and Writing Skills. Today's accountants are expected to evaluate complex situations. In addition to the basic, detecting, predicting, advising, these kind of actions. Critical thinking is therefore very important throughout these processes, and also effective writing, communication skills are required. So in this lecture, we introduce those basic skills that can help you develop critical thinking and your writing and communication skills. First, critical thinking skills. And here, critical means it is characterized by careful and exact evaluation and judgment. Therefore, critical thinking is a process of understanding how thinking and learning work, and of using high-order skills for analyzing issues and synthesizing ideas logically. So critical thinking is purposeful, it's goal-oriented, and it's creative. And here we mention high-order skills. So what is high-order skills? High-order reasoning skills means analysis, synthesis, and critical assessment. So when we analyze a problem, we need to break the idea into their component parts and to consider each separately. Then we need to connect these different component parts in order to derive relationship and to answer a question. Right, finally, a critical assessment of the conclusion will be reached. Right, which will be examined with sound logic reasoning. So based on this definition, critical thinking includes the following things. Right, recognizing any explanatory relations among statements. Recognizing structure of argument. For example, recognizing premises, right, assumptions, and conclusions. Then assessing consistency or inconsistency or equivalence among those statements and their logical implications. And finally, formulation and identifying deductively and inductively, right, justify conclusions based on available evidence. The definition is very broad. In fact, we received these kind of training when we are very little age, right? Possibly from the elementary school. So let's see some basic easy questions for critical thinking skills. Right? For example, what is a tens number in this sequence? Right, we need to identify their relationship. Then we're going to figure out what is a tens number. And it's pretty easy to observe that incrementally they will, right? Other numbers 6. Right, 11 minus 5, 6. 17 minus 11, 6. So if we add another 4 numbers, right, we're going to add 24. So the tens number here, 59. Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. Alright, next questions we're going to assign values for HCST, right? The choice is 10, 8, 7, 5, so we're going to link these two to determine whether H is 10 or 8, 7, or 5. And here we have some relationships, and I'm going to use these. And logically, we're going to determine HCST. So T not equal, right, which is 8. T cannot be 8, and C is less than 8. Right, C is less than 8, so C could be 7 or 5, S is smaller than C. So if C is 5, then we cannot hold this relationship. So C must be 7, right? C is 7, and S will be 5, right? Because T cannot be 8, so T must be 10. Then the only choice for H will be 8. Alright, so those are pretty easy examples. And finally, right, you have only an 8-liter jug and a 3-liter jug. Both containers are unmarked. You need exactly 4 liters of water. How can you get it if a water faucet is handy? So you're gonna get water from the water faucet, but you need exact 4 liters. But because there's no marker, so you cannot use 8 liter and take half. No, it's not exact. So we want exact 4 liters of water. How do we do that? Right, so pause the video and think about it. It's not that easy. Right, so we're going to use relationship between 8 and 3 to get 4. Right? And what is relationship between 4 and 3? Right? It's 1 difference, 1 liter difference. So if we can create 1 liter, maybe we can figure it out. So how do we figure out 1 liter? Alright? Here is what we do. Okay? Now you're gonna use a 3-liter jug to get water from the faucet, right? And pour into the 8-liter jug. So 3-liter jug is empty, so we're gonna get water again and pour into the 8 liters. Now 8-liter jug has 6 liter water. We're gonna fold the 3-liter jug again, and then we're gonna fold the 8-liter jug. That's 2 liter water, and this 8-liter jug will be full. So there's only 1 liter water left in this 3-liter jug. Now we have 1 liter water. All right, we're gonna empty 8-liter jug. So we're gonna get 1 liter water back to this larger jug. All right, we have 1 liter. Then we're gonna fold the 3-liter jug and pour the water into the larger ones. Now we have exact 4 liter water in this 8-liter jug. So this is how we get the answer. You see, it's not that easy. You need a lot of critical thinking. It's very difficult to discuss, the idea of thinking, because it's not really it's a process cannot be really separated. Not that easy. Probably the most famous way to separate thinking into a variety of processes is Bloom's taxonomy. It's well known for classification of thought. Okay, it has 6 levels, from high to low. Okay, the highest level of thinking is creating. Next is evaluating, analyzing, applying, understanding, and remembering. Remembering will be the lowest. This is also a hierarchy used by the CPA exams. So let's talk about from the lowest level, remembering. Right? Remembering means we recall some information, right? We know, including recognizing, listing, describing, naming, finding. Those are the easiest questions. Right, for example, we will ask you to define the concept for assets or liability. Those are remembering questions. Right, next level is understanding. Here we need to explain idea. We're going to interpret, summarizing, right, classifying, explaining. So that's next level. Right, once we remember something. Now here we're going to interpret or summarize something. For example, here we give you a bunch of account. You're going to distinguish which is an asset account, right? So you understand this concept. Right, next is applying. Here we're going to apply, right, what we learn, apply laws and theories to solve problems. So we have a lot of problem solving or calculation questions belong to this category. Next level is analyzing. It's more complex, situations in which we're gonna break information into parts, right, to explore their relationship. Right, we're gonna compare those information. We can organize those information. And next high level is evaluating. Here we need to justify a decision, right, by checking, right, by hypothesizing, by critiquing, or by experimenting. So it's probably the highest levels can be tested. Right, the highest level probably cannot be tested easily. That's creating. But here we're gonna generating new ideas, right? New things, new designings. So this is the highest level of thinking, that's creating. And high order knowledge occurs when using high order skills. And level thinking are incremental. You cannot just jump from remembering, right, to creating. No. So one must be able to perform low-level skills before moving up. Right, it's like we see some of those famous artists like Picasso. Why he is so creative? No, he has been moving up slowly from the low level then to the top level. Right? He can draw really nice paintings, traditional ones, really well before he became so creative and become the king of abstract painting. Right, once we know the level of thinking, so how do we solve a problem? So it is helpful for accountants to use the universal elements of reasoning, right, when thinking critically and arriving at a solution to a problem. What are these elements? We have purpose, issue, information, concept, assumptions, interpretation, implication, and conclusions. And let's discuss these elements. So first, purpose. Right, we reason things. Why? We need to meet some specific target or some goals, probably to answer your client's question. Right, for example, how do I reduce my tax liability? Right? Any unclear purpose leads to various problems later on, so the purpose must be clear. Well, next we're gonna try to identify the issue. Right, for example, for tax purposes, you want to understand whether your expense recognition is correct. That can help you reduce your tax burden, right? So it's expense recognition. That's the issue. So that must be clear. Right, next it's information. We're going to collect information from client, so that's client provided data, and also we want to collect both the authoritative, right, and the non-authoritative sources like the literature and regulations. Okay, we collect those information, but make sure that you understand information may have errors and defects, so we have to we have to pay attention and examine those information carefully. Now with information, next is we're going to have basic understanding of those concepts. Right, so we know how certain transaction, will affect a tax litigation, and certain will not. So we know those concepts. And next is assumptions. Okay, you have to make assumptions. Right, understand your client situations. Right, understand how basically the business is operating. We make assumptions. For example, the next year you're going to do the same thing, right? And your business remain normal, and those kind of things are assumptions. Well, next, interpretations. So we're going to infer from our research, right? Based on the evidence we gather. Right? Because all reasoning requires some type of interpretation of the data in order to draw conclusions. So interpretation is a very important step. And before we draw the final conclusions, we must discuss implications. We need to consider various implications from our reasonings. For example, if we do this, what's going to happen? If we do that, and alternative things will happen. So both the negative and the positive implications will be discussed. And finally, that's conclusions. Then we're going to reach a conclusion that is not too narrow, neither too broad, right? In addressing the research, the issue. Next, we talk about writing, right? Communication is very important for accounting profession, both in oral and written form, especially for written form, because usually you give your client, a written report. Right? In fact, accounting professionals have ranked written communication as one of the most important skills, right, in their careers. Writing is a process that requires various skills, and two important skills are composing skills and editing skills. Right? We need to organize our writing in logical matters, trying to answer to what is asked for by the reader. So, and those content are appropriate for the reader. Usually this will be considered for the first draft. Then we're going to revise our draft, which needs editing skills. Right? We need to be concise, try to avoid repetitive text, try to be improve our clarities, choose the appropriate words, and use the standard English. Right? In fact, SEC has some requirement for our writing. The SEC Release 7380, it's a plain English disclosure. It requires public companies to use plain English in prospectus cover pages, in summaries, in the risk factor analysis. Okay, so people understand those important things. And also, SEC issued a handbook. It's called a plain English handbook. Right? It specifies the following principles for clear writings. So let's see, what are those principles? Active voice. Right? We use direct verbs, short sentences. Define a definite and concrete. There's no vague languages. tabulate presentations in order to organize complex information in these tables. Okay, we're going to limit jargons for better understanding, and there's no multiple negative. Clarity is also always important. And let's see some examples of those requirements. Active voice. So read the original paragraph before to see if you understand. Then I'm going to try the revised one. No person has been authorized to give any information or make any representations other than those contained or incorporated by reference in this joint proxy statement prospectus, and if given or made, such information or representation must not be relied upon as having been authorized. Okay, it's kind of difficult to understand unless you read several times, right? Several times, but that's not the intention, right? For readers to spend time on these kind of things. And now we move to active voice. Okay, that's easy to understand. You should rely only on the information contained in this document or incorporated by reference. We have not authorized anyone to provide you with information that is different. Okay, that's very clear once we change the active voice. Using short sentences. Okay, I'm not going to read. It's a long sentence, difficult to read. Okay? When we apply short sentence, that become much clearer. We must comply with the SEC Act 1934. Accordingly, we file annual, quarterly, and current reports, proxy statement, and other information with SEC. Alright, that's clear. Use definite, concrete, everyday languages. So before, here we have history of net loss. The company has recorded a net loss under General Accepted Accounting Principles for each fiscal year since its inception, as well as for the entering 9 months of the year. So far, it's okay. However, these results include the effect of certain significant non-cash accounting transactions. Its value here. Okay, what is a significant non-cash transaction? Okay, so people, it will be difficult to understand. Now we use more clear, definite, concrete languages. Right, the same history of net loss. Here we change to active voice. We have not recorded net loss under general accounting principles for each year since we started business. Okay, and for the entering 9 months of the year, our loss were caused in part by the annual write-off of a position of the goodwill resulting from the 10 acquisitions we made during this period. So here, explained, replaced those value words. So now we understand what are those non-cash accounting transactions. Right, let's try the before. Okay, you read it to see if you can understand this paragraph. Right? So, how do you feel? So, some of those words, right, like to the extent inconsistent, they're within replaces. Right? That's not easy to understand. But maybe the law professionals they understand this better. Okay, and of course the other words like to which description reference is hereby made. But basically what it tries to convey, the information is Right? The company, we disclose information about our notes in two separate places. Right? One is one is a note, and the other is a prospectus. Right? Information in prospectus and a pricing supplement will be different. Why? Because since the notes are made at the time in pricing, rely on information on the pricing supplement over different information in the prospectus. Right? And try to avoid multiple negatives. Right? Multiple negatives. Let's try this example. Multiple negative. It isn't uncommon for people not to realize that nobody can avoid making no mistakes at all. What does it mean? Right, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, it tried to say that it's common for people to realize that no one can avoid making mistakes. Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. So if there's a multiple negative, that's really confusing readers. So let's try that before. Except when an applicant has submitted a request for withdrawal without the appropriate tax identification numbers, the request will be honored within 1 business day. So here, the except, without, those are two negatives. So I should remove those, cancel those. So the idea here is we will send you money within 1 business day if you include your tax identification number in your withdrawal request. Okay, that's much clearer. Now we know SEC requires plain English. Plain English does not mean overly simplified English. Plain English is a opposite of obscure English. So how do we be more effective in applying plain English? Here are the basic requirements. Right. First, we know our audience. Right. Basically, we need to choose the tone and writing skills, right, based on our audience, based on who's going to read it. The supervisor, shareholder, or government agencies. Okay, so that those will be slightly different. Disclose relevant information. Sometimes we can really make report really long, but if it's really long, some readers will miss the main point. Because they don't have the patience to read everything. So we need to identify the reader's needs. What do they want? Okay, especially for small investors, they really don't have the time and the knowledge to read everything. So we need to emphasize the main points. Right, use techniques of writings. Basically, we should eliminate digressions and irrelevant details. Be more precise. And finally, we're going to structure the document. For example, using the bullet point, right, headings, and the graphic illustrations, basically to make it more readable. Now, usually written communication is needed if it's a complex situations, and we need to reply or answer customers' questions carefully in a comprehensive way. The written communication is needed. Sometimes, if it's just a quick response, maybe oral communication can be arranged. When we communicate with client, daily communications, the 4 types of business letters will be used if we want to have a written communication. They are transmittal letters, status update letters, action request letters, and opinion letters. A transmit letter does not seek an action. It just tell client something is there, and if you want to know more, just contact me. Right? One example of transmittal letter is a firm's newsletter. The status update letter will remind client about situations, right? Basically, you're gonna recall, right, the previous correspondence or summarize previous actions that has been taken. Then you're gonna provide update on this issue. That's status update letters. Right, action request letters. It's going to ask your request client to do something. Okay, basically you can ask client to provide you evidence or documents, and you're going to list at deadlines, those kind of things. Those are action request letters. And finally, opinion letters is going to provide answers to a client. Of course, you're going to restate or list all the critical facts that are the basis for the conclusion or advice provided in the letter. So you're going to list everything in the opinion letter. And then writing a memo to the file is often important. It's part of the requirement for a documentation in accounting and auditing, the taxation. That's a must. We have to do a memo. A memo typically has the following component: facts, issues, conclusion, and reasoning, especially for tax research. So we're going to list the facts. So basically, this is what's happening to the client, right? Better to provide many facts over there. Then we're going to narrow things to the real issue, right? What is the most critical facts that become the issue? Then you're going to list all the law that's related with this issue. Then you're going to make conclusions, how each element of the laws, right, applies in the case. And finally, reason. You're going to discuss the law and authorities and their application to the client's set of facts, right? Those reasoning is going to support your conclusions. All right, here we have an example of a memo. That's a tax research memo. Right, it's to file or to client, and from the advisor, state, subject. Okay, the facts list, right, the client, about a client. Right, the client has typical home expenses, include mortgages. Want to understand deductible expenses. So the real issue is, can the client deduct expenses related to her home office? Right, so here we have list all the applicable law and reasoning analysis. These are the applicable law related to home office. Okay, we're going to do a thorough research and find 1, 2, 3 tax regulations. Then we can analyze issues to discuss how these law applies to the client's case. Okay, and finally we make conclusions. The client qualifies for a home office deduction. Okay, so basically that's how we write a memo, research memo. Right, so in addition, as you can see, because memo is a formal document, we try to use the third person in the memo. Okay, he or she, right? Never use I, we, right? Those. And I try to be concise. Although the length may vary, it could be a really long memo, but we try to be concise. Right, that concludes lecture 2.